How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samach Tes, Daf 69 of Masechta Sanhedrin. Friends, Daf Samach Tes is the second daf / first full daf of Perek Ben Sorah Umoreh. Okay, and I don't know, is it an interesting daf? Is it not an interesting daf? In my opinion, it's interesting. What do you want me to tell you? Okay, so yesterday we had said that what is it? It says Ben, Kohen sheholid ein b'ronaseh ben sorah umoreh. We had said yesterday that if a Kohen gives birth to a child, that child cannot be ben sorah umoreh because it's leish ben. He has to be an adult who has a child. Now this of course implies that it's possible for a child, a minor, to have a child, right? Because we're saying if a minor has a child, then that child cannot be ben sorah umoreh, implying of course that a minor can have a child. Now ufliga de Rabba, 4 lines from the bottom of Daf Samach Ches Amud Beis, ufliga de Rabba. Now that notion, that concept argues on with Rabba. The Amar Rabba, the Rabba says, Kohen eno molid, that a Kohen is incapable of fathering a child. And Shenemar, as the pasuk says, now this pasuk is by Oshim Gezelos. This pasuk is by a scenario where Shimon steals from Reuven, and then Shimon denies that he stole from Reuven. He swears that he did not steal from Reuven, and then he has a change of heart and he admits that he actually did steal from Reuven. So in that case, he needs to return the amount that was stolen, plus a fifth, plus he has to bring an Ashram Gzelos. What happens if Reuven's gestorben? What happens if Reuven died and went to Wellwood? So you pay. So you give the money to the heirs. What if he doesn't have any heirs? That is our story. So we say if there's no heirs, then it goes to the Kohen Cheveh. There's these young people outside. They've been out there just sitting in the park. They must be on some kind of school trip, I guess, and there was, I guess, no scheduling, I guess, for like a few hours. I don't know. So they've just been sitting in the park for, it's probably about 45 minutes plus now. All right. I was like, anyways, so Kohen eno molid. So Shneimar, so im ein lo'ish goyel. So if Reuven doesn't have any relatives, Reuven died, he went to Wellwood, and so Shimon has to pay his relatives. What if he doesn't have any heirs? So what do you mean that how can you have a yid without an heir? Okay, even if there's no brothers, there's no parents, there's no children, it's a cousin, epis. Well, we're talking about a proselyte. If Reuven was a proselyte and he never got married, doesn't have any children, so he technically doesn't have any family. So then the payment goes to the coin. Now here's the thing. It says ve'im, and if ein lo ish goyel. So it says if an ish. So we're saying if an adult doesn't have a heir, doesn't have a child. Meaning it could be, so he might have a child, he might not have a child. If he has a child, so you give the money to the child. If he doesn't have a child, so then you give the money to the coin. Now we're saying ve'im ein lo ish. This question of maybe he has a child, maybe he doesn't have a child, applies to an ish, applies to an adult. The implication being that if we're talking about a minor, there's no question. Of course, he does not have a child because a minor is incapable of fathering a child. An adult, you have to say, hey, maybe he has a child, maybe he doesn't. But Kohen, the pasuk's not talking about a Kohen because a Kohen, you don't need to check if there's any heirs over there, right? If Reuven was a Kohen, you don't have to check it, see if there's any heirs, because obviously there are no heirs since he's a Kohen Cheveh. I have coffee with me. I'm going to chop it on a shtickle. All right. However, Abaye asked a kasha on his Rebbe Rabbah Ish, where's this pasuk? V'ish, by Shifcha Charufa. Oh, yeah. Without getting into the details of Shifcha Charufa, what does it say? Ish, ein le ish, ben tesha. Okay, so without getting into details of Shifcha Charufa, basically a Shifcha Charufa is a Shifcha Knainis, who is engaged to a Eved Ivri. Taka, this week, when I'm recording it, it's Parshas Mishpatim, which is Dafka, where we have this pasuk in no, this is from Vayikra, but in Parshas Mishpatim, at the beginning, in the first aliyah, it says, in Begapa Yovid, Begapa Yetze, in Baal Ishu, V'yatzu Yeladea Imo, I think, right? Ve'im Adonav Yitin Lo Isha V'yladea Yel Adonea V'yetze Lachovshi. Something like that. It's complicated. But basically, I don't want to get into Shifcha Charufa stuff because it's not so important right now. But basically, an Eved Ivri, I think if an Eved Ivri is married, I don't want to get into this. Okay, what's an Eved Ivri? An Eved Ivri is a Yid who, for whatever reason, becomes an Eved. He stole, he didn't have money, whatever it might be. Maybe he wants to be an Eved. And if he's married, so if when he comes into being an Eved Ivri, he's already married, so I think in that case, his Adon is allowed to give him another wife. That wife can be a Shifcha Knainis. An Eved Ivri can marry Shifcha Knainis. You hear that? An Eved Ivri is just a regular Yid, yet he's allowed to marry Shifcha Knainis, who, I guess she's like kind of not quite a Nachriya, but also not quite a Yehudiya. But anyways, and then they have children, and those children are for the Adon. Now, if you have a scenario where be'etzem you have a Shifcha Knainis who is betrothed to a Eved Ivri, it gets more complicated because maybe she was owned by two masters and then one of them free, whatever. You have this Shifcha Knainis who's betrothed to an Eved Ivri, and then somebody else comes and sleeps with her. We say that there's makis, okay, whatever. So now, here's the thing. Ish, in the context of Shifcha Charufa, there it says ish, and that's the important thing. That is what we're talking about. That we're talking about the ish asher yishka v'isha shivcha zer, etc. That this other person who's sleeping with her is an ish. Ein li elo ish. All I know is an adult. Ben tes shon v'yom echad shiroi lebiyam minayin. How do I know that this would apply as well to somebody who is 9 years old and a day? That if somebody's 9 and a day that sleeps with her, they would also apply. Tamlomer ve-ish. There's a vav at the beginning of the word ish to include ochit ben tesha shanim v'yamechad, 9 years old in a day. So we see that even 9 years and a day, at least the shaykh by Shifcha Charufa, Abaye wants to argue that it means that 9 in a day, tesha shanim v'yamechad is capable of having a child. So Omerle, Rabbah says no. Yesh loy ve'enoi moilid. Yeah, he's capable of having bia, right? Be also bia, but he's not capable of fathering a child with that bia. Like grain that has not yet reached a third of its growth. That if you plant it, it won't actually grow anything. Domi. By the besmesh of Chizkiah was taught v'chiyozid ish. Interesting. It's a pasuk by murder. It says v'chiyozid ish hare'eu lahargo ba'arma me mizbechi tikachenu lamus. But we're teaching the word yazid. Ish mezid umazriya. An adult is able to cook up sperm and impregnate. Vein katan mezid umazriya, and a cotton, while he might be ro'u lebia, maybe teisha shalom v'yachad might be ro'u lebia, but biaso bia, but he doesn't cook up his sperm and impregnate. Amalei of Motchil Ravashi, my mashma dai mezid lishna de bashulehu. How do we know that mezid is a lashon of cooking up? The Chsiv is the pasuk says vayozid Yankiv nozid, that with the Yankiv Avinu, he cooked up a lentil soup for Esav. Do you think it was a good lentil soup? Interesting. You think Yaakov was a good cook? No, you think he put in enough salt? I wonder what the recipe was. I wonder. Maybe it was very good. Taco. He's just drinking more coffee. All right. Now, okay, now listen up, Chaver. Listen up. Listen properly. We saw the besmesh of what? We saw the besmesh of Bishmal. Ben veloy av. Aha. So we saw the besmesh of Bishmal that by Ben Sora Mora it says Prielish Ben Sora Mora Ben velo av. That Davka, this Ben Sora Mora, is a child. He's not a father. Interesting. So this Ben Sora Mora, who we're stoning to death, cannot be a father. Now that's interesting, because the Ben Sora Mora is Shtei Cyrus. Let's just say Shtei Cyrus is 13 years old. Okay, so he's 13 years old. I think, should we say Shtei Cyrus? All right, well, let's just say Shtei Cyrus, because that's what it is. Right? The Mishnah says, right, Mishavi Shtei Cyrus Vachiakiv Zokon. So Vachiakiv Zokon. Okay, so but the point is that once he's Shtei Cyrus, he's an adult. Okay. Now the thing is, it's from as the Mishnah says, right? Mishayovi Shtei Cyrus Vachiakiv Zokon. That there's a short window, a small window where a child can be a Ben Sora Mora. That window is Mishayovi Shtei Cyrus Vachiakiv Zokon, and as we're going to see in a minute, that's a 3-month window. There's literally 3 months from the time that he becomes an adult at Shtei Cyrus. There's a 3-month window where it could be a Ben Sora Mora. Now, Dver Bishmal, now this Tana Dver Bishmal is saying that Ben Velo Av, that for this child to be a Ben Sora Mora, he can't be a father, implying that there's a possibility that he could be a father. And we say, but if he is, then he can't be a Ben Sora Mora. So now, how could it be that we're putting this kid to death for being a Ben Sora Mora? We say, wait, no, you can't put him to death because he's already a father. Now we're talking about a kid who maximum is 3 months after he becomes an adult. How could he be a father by that point? If he's a father at that point, by that point, well then when was he impregnating this woman? It must have been 9 months prior, 6 months before he was an adult, while he was still a minor. So this is what we're trying to figure out, implying that a minor is able to father children, right? So again, Vatanat Bishmal, we was talking this message of Bishmal, Ben Veloy of, that a Ben Sora Mora cannot himself be a father. If we're about to put him to death, we say, wait, he's a father, so then we wouldn't put him to death. So what's the dilio? If we're talking about that he impregnated this woman after Shtei Cyrus, once he was already an adult, and the baby was born before, right, within this window between Shtei Cyrus and Makiv Zokon, but there's not enough for a baby to develop during that time. Rav Kus Bedoy says, that the whole window for a Ben Sora Umora is 3 months, Sachakol. Zeu. And if we're saying that he's impregnating a woman at the beginning of the 3-month window, by the end of the 3-month window, there's not going to be a baby yet. So rather it must be that he impregnated this woman prior to Shtei Cyrus, and the baby was born before Sheyakiv Zokon, within this window, and the baby was already born by then. And we say, well, since he's a father, he can't be a Ben Sora Mora, but he impregnated this woman prior to Shtei Cyrus, when he was still a minor. Vishmamino, and we see Ko'in Molid, that a minor is capable of impregnating a woman. Lo nit. Lo the Yaber Basar the Icy Shtei Cyrus. No, really, he impregnated this woman after Shtei Cyrus, once he was already an adult, because a minor cannot impregnate a woman. Ve'olid Basar da'akiv Zokon. And then when was the baby born? After the window closed, after Sheyakiv Zokon. Udukokashad of Kus Bedoy. What about Rav Kus Bedoy, though, that the window is only 3 months and the baby's being born afterwards? How could he have been a father? Kiasur of Dimi, Omar Amri b'mayrove ben v'lo aroi lekroso of. That by the time of Rebbe Shmuel, it's not ben v'lo of, it's not a child and not a father. No, what it's saying, right, because that would imply that he's already a father at the time of, within that window. No, he's only becoming a father after the window. What it means is that a ben v'lo aroi lios av, not fit to be a father. That 3 months is already, the uber is nicker, is already, it would be, we would already be able to tell that he impregnated this woman, in which case he would not be able to be a ben soramor, but the baby wouldn't actually be born for another 6 months. But if you have this child who impregnated a woman from the time he became an adult, and now it's 3 months later, and you can tell that there's this woman who's pregnant, then he would not be a ben soyer umar. I'm going to drink a stick of my coffee. So now, says the Gemara. I should probably... Where am I? Okay, now we can go a shtickle further. Gufa, we said, Amr v'kus b'dai, Amr b'shabsai, kol yomov sheben soyer umara, ena inan ela gimel choloshim bavad, that the whole window for a ben soyer umara is 3 months. Ve'onatanan mishovish shtei sayers v'achiyakiv zakon. But we said the window is not month-based, it's, I don't know, developmentally based. But, what's that called? Anatomically based or something like that. Keilu, it's not 3 months, it's from Shtei Cyrus until Yaakov Zakon. So he gives Zakon, Fagav Deloy Malu Gimel Chodashim. No, so what it is that whichever is first. If he's Makiv Zakon, within 3 months, okay, so it's over at that point. Malu Gimel Chodashim, Fagav Deloy Yikiv. And after 3 months is the max, and if at the end of the 3 months he still isn't Yaakov Zakon, still 3 months are up, the window is closed. So now Yosef Yaakov Minar Pokid Kamid Ravina. So Rabbi Yaakov Minar Pokid was sitting before Ravina, but Yosef Amar Mishmei Ravuna B'Rav Yeshua, and he says to Ravina, quoting Ravuna B'Rav Yeshua, Shma Mina Midrav Krus B'Dai. So we see from Rav Kruz B'dai Amar Reb Shab said that the window is 3 months. We said Ben V'Laroi Liosav, right? That be'etzem at the end of 3 months you could tell if a woman is pregnant. So what does that therefore mean? Yoledis l'shiva in uber nikar l'shlish yomel. So what we learned from there is that so be'etzem, if a woman is if it's going to be a 9-month pregnancy, so right, because the assumption is a pregnancy is 9 months, and if we're saying that at the end of 3 months you can already tell that a woman is pregnant, and that's why we have this kind of 3-month window. So 3 months relative to 9 months is a third of the pregnancy. So after a third of the 9-month pregnancy, you can tell that she is already pregnant. The shaila is, what if it's a 7-month pregnancy? Do we say that you will be able to tell that she's pregnant after 2 1/3 months, or is it always 3 months? That's the shaila. So we're saying that from the fact, now we want to argue that from the fact that we're saying that the window is 3 months, and within that, at any time within that 3-month window, this child could be a ben soramor, must mean that even when a baby is born after 7 months, the uber will only, right, the pregnancy will only be recognizable after 3 months still, because if she were to give birth at 7 months and the pregnancy would be able to be recognizable at 2 1/3 months, well then the window should only be 2 1/3 months. And if after 2 2/3 months this child stole, wine and meat and drank it and ate it and all that stuff, we shouldn't kill him because of it, because, we should close the window at 2 1/3. We should be, right? As we're going to see in a few minutes, right? When it comes to the nefashos, we always try to be lenient, right? So therefore, from the fact that we're saying that the window is for 3 months, and that the window does not close after 2 1/3 months, it must mean that 2 1/3 months is not a thing, and that even if a pregnancy is a 7th-month pregnancy, the pregnancy will be recognizable still after 3 months. Because if it was after 2 1/3 months, then the window should close then. So again, so Shmaminu Midrab Krus B'dai Amr Reb Shabsa Yoledis L'Shiva Ein Ubrinikar L'Shlish Yomel. So we see that from the fact that it's a 3-month window, therefore, a woman who gives birth after 7 months, the fetus is still only recognizable after 3 months, not 2 1/3 months. Because if it enters your mind that a 7-month pregnancy would be recognizable after 2 1/3, lamali gimel, then why is the window where this child can be stoned, why is it 3 months? Betrevitilso sagya 2 1/3 should be the window should be closed after 2 1/3. On my lay, to which Ravina responds, La'olam Eimalach, really I'll say it to you, Ubranikr Lishlishomel, that actually, no, even by 7-month pregnancy, the pregnancy is recognizable after 3 months. After 2 1/3 months. Okay, so if that's the case, then shouldn't we close the window at 2 1/3? So zil basar ruba. However, we go based on the majority, and most women give birth after 9 months, and therefore, in most cases, the fetus would be the pregnancy would be recognizable after 3 months, and we go based on the majority, and that is why the window is 3 months and not 2 1/3 months. They relayed Ravina's opinion, perspective to Rav Huna ben Yoshua, who had said that it's a third, that it's recognizable after 3 months for a 7-month pregnancy. And he says to them, Ravina's whole thing was that by a 7-month pregnancy, it's recognizable after 2 1/3. So why don't we close the window then after 2 1/3? Because, well, the majority of women, for the majority of women, it would be recognizable after 3 months, so we go after the majority. To which Rav Huna ben Yoshua responds, nonsense. Of course, by din nefashos, we are lenient. And therefore, if there would be a possibility of closing that window of stoning this child at 2 1/3 months, we would do it. From the fact that we don't do it must mean that the pregnancy is only recognizable after 3 months. When it comes to din nefashos, when there's lives on the line, somebody's facing capital punishment, do we go based on the majority? The Torah says in the Kaddish capital punishment that they will judge and they will save. And you're saying go based on the majority and say that this child could be killed for an extra 2/3 of a month? Right, add 2/3 of a month onto that window. So now they relayed it back to Ravina, who had said that we go based on the majority. And Ravina says, wait 1 second. Ravina disagrees with Rav Huna ben Yoshua's premise, and he says, what do you mean by din nefashos? We do go based on the majority. And what's his proof? His proof is, we learned in the Mishnah, I think it was in the 5th parak, echad omer b'shnayim b'chodesh ve'echad omer b'gimel b'chodesh edusan kayemes shezeh yodeh b'ibur shechodesh shezeh yodeh. Right, we had a Mishnah that said that if one person says that the murder happened on the 2nd of the month, the other said it was the 3rd of the month, we say it's fine, they're both talking about the same thing. One of them knew about that the previous month was a leap year, the other one didn't. A leap month, the other one didn't. So there we're going based on an assumption. If we're always just at all costs trying to be lenient and save the person from capital punishment, well, if one person says on the 2nd of the month, the other person says the 3rd of the month, well, let's just say, hey, there's a contradiction in the testimony. It's inadmissible. But we don't say that. We say probably what happened was that one person knew it was a leap month, the other one didn't. So we are going based on the majority and saying in most cases it was an honest mistake. And we will move ahead with the capital case. And if we say that by dinei nefashos we do not go based on majority, well then let us say hani dafka well then we should say that they're contradicting each other, but we don't say that they're contradicting each other, and instead we say that we go based on the majority and that they are aligned. So we see rather Ravina continues and says that rather what happens is that we go based on the majority, and the majority make a mistake when it comes to the majority of the people in such a scenario where one says it's the second of the month, the other one says the third of the month. In a majority of cases, they probably made a mistake about the leap month, and we go based on the majority. So we see that even by Din Nefashos we can go based on the majority, and therefore Ravina argues that you could say that by a 7-month pregnancy, the pregnancy would be recognizable after 2 1/3 months. However, we go based on the majority where it would be 3 months. Says Rav Yomi Midifti that we also learned this in a Mishnah, a girl who's already 3 and a day. Miskadesh is bebia, okay, she can, right, or her father can marry her off, although of course we say that you should wait until she's older, but anyways, it's possible for her father to marry her off, and she would be miskadesh is bebia already. And if she was married and her husband died, and then the brother now marries her, okay, if he does yibum, he's kone her. And if she's married and somebody sleeps with her, then chayiv for eshes ish. Umetame is be'ala, l'tami mishkavatachton ke'elyon. If she's a nida, so then there's the concept of mishkavatachton ke'elyon. Nises la kohen ocheles betrume. If she's married to a kohen, and she's Yisraelis, she can eat trume. But if somebody who's pasul to her sleeps with her, then she can no longer eat trume if she's allowed to eat trume. And if any of the arayas in the Torah sleep with her, they will be killed for it. Now, vihi p'tura, and she's of course p'tura because she's a katana. Now the thing is, right? So let's say, right. So for example, that includes eshes ish, right? So if an eshes ish sleep, right. So if she's married and somebody sleeps with her, so that person's going to be chayiv misa, is going to be chayiv chenek. But one second, there is a possibility that she might end up being an ilonis. And if she's an ilonis, then the whole marriage would be retroactively called off because he married her assuming that she wasn't actually an ilonis, and therefore they wouldn't technically be married, and the guy wouldn't be chayiv misa, and yet we're killing him because we're assuming that the majority of cases she's not going to be an ilonis. Why are we going to kill the guy? Ema ilonisi. Let's say she's what if she ends up being an ilonis? And her husband, when they got married, it was under the assumption that she was not an ilonis, right? An ilonis is a castratal. So now elalav tamina zilba saruba from nashim lav ilonios ninu. Rather, it must be that we go based on the majority, and most women are not castratalas, and therefore we can. If somebody sleeps with her when she's an eshes ish, that person will be chayiv chenek, and we'll go based on the majority and kill that bugger. Lo, we say no, that's actually not the reason why. My chayiv aleh dikatani korban. We're not talking about capital punishment there. We're talking about bringing a korban if it was an accidental bia. All right. V'mumasin al yoda katani. What do you mean? But it says mumasin, that they're killed. Well, b'baaleh avia. Well, it's talking about if her father slept with her, so then. Okay, so it is talking about intentional, but there the issue is that it's her father, regardless of if she's an ilonis or not, her father is going to be chayiv. But what do you mean? But it doesn't say just if her father sleeps with her, it says if any of the arayos, including eshes ish, sleeps with her. So if we're saying that mumas and ales, we're talking about misa, and we're saying any of the arayos, including eshes ish, and we're saying that they're going to be killed. But what if she's an ilonis? So well, still. We could say that it's talking about it, meaning what's the whole question? That, what if she turns out to be an ilonis, then he didn't, when he got married, he assumed that she wasn't an ilonis. But this is talking about a scenario where he accepted upon himself that even if she was to be an ilonis, he would still be married, in which case there isn't actually, we don't have to rely upon any kind of majority in this case, because he explicitly stipulated that they would remain married in any event, and therefore the person who sleeps with her is going to be chayiv for eshes ish, and there's no concern. What if she's an ilonis? That wouldn't actually affect anything. All right. Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught. Hamisuleles b'vna kohen. This is exciting. So a woman is fooling around with her minor child. V'heraba, and this minor child did ha'araya, right? Either nishikas aver or hachnosa satora. It's going to come up a few times within the next few days. We've already gone into it. I don't really like discussing awkward concepts, so I'm just going to assume that you know what I'm talking about. Thanks. Tana Rabbanan Amsulez b'vnakain v'heraba. Beishamai Omrim says Beishamai posla min hakehuna. So Beishamai says, okay, she's pesula min hakehuna. Okay. Uvesil machshirin. Beisil says that she's still kosher. She can marry a kohen. All right. Amr b'chia brei de Rabba bar Nachmani. Amr v'chizda v'amila. Amr v'chizda. Amr zeiri. Akol modim. Everybody agrees with ben teisha shanim v'yem echad shabi also bia. Okay. Everybody agrees that if this child is 9 and a day, teisha shanim v'yem echad, so then already it's considered bia, and she would be psula min hakehuna. Pochs mi ben shmona she'ein bia so bia, and less than 8 certainly ain bia so bia. The shaila is lo nechliku ela ben shmeina if the child is already 8. Between 8 and 9, would that child be posel the mother if they fool around and did ha'araya? The Beishamai Savre Gaminon Midoris Harishenim Uvesil Savre Lo Gaminon Midoris Harishenim. So the shaila is, do we learn out from the earlier generations or not? Apparently in earlier generations they were capable of having children already from the age of 8, which is not the case anymore. So Beishamai says we do learn out from the earlier generations, and therefore she's possible. Beisil says we don't learn out from the earlier generations, and therefore she is kosher. Okay. V'doros harishonim minolin to oilid. Now, how do we know that in the earlier generations, in the Frida Gedoris, they were able to, the boys were able to have children already to father children already at the age of 8. Here we go. Okay, this is basically going to be the rest of the Omen. Okay. Just rubbing my nose. Alright, here we go. So maybe it's from the following. So Bathsheba, who was the mother of Shlomo HaMelech, was the daughter of Eliam. Right? That's what we said, right? Halazos Bathsheba bas Eliam. Eshes Uri Achiti. Bathsheba was the daughter of Eliam. Uchsiv Eliam ben Achisoifel Agiloni. And Eliam's father was Achisoifel. So Shlomo's mother was Bathsheba. Bathsheba's father was Eliam. Eliam's father was Achisoifel. Uchsiv, and it says, Vayishlach b'adnosan anovi v'ekra shmo Yedidya bavur Hashem Azoi. Okay. And Shlomo HaMelech was born, his name was Yedidya. Givaldik. Now, Uchsiv, Vayilish nosayim yomim, that it was 2 years later, Vayu Gozim LaAvshalom. Okay, fine. Uchsiv VaAvshalom Baruch Vayelech Geshur Vayisham Shalosh Shanim. Okay, another 3 years. Uchsiv Vayishav Avshalom BiYerushalayim Shnosayim Yomim Ufnei HaMelech L'Ra. Another 2 years. So now we're talking 2 years later plus 3 years later plus 2 years later. So we're talking about 7 years later. Shlomo HaMelech is now 7 years old, and Uchsiv Vayimikitz Arbaim Shana Vayom Avshalom El HaMelech El Chana VaShalom Es Nidrash and Adayt L'Hashem Bechevin. And Avshalom, that is when he rebels. When Shlomo HaMelech is 7 years old. And then Achisoifel, that's when he killed himself, when Shlomo HaMelech was 7 years old at that time. That people of blood and trickery will not live half their lives. Doeg lived for 34 years, and Achisoifel lived for 33 years. Okay, so if we kind of put everything together, right? So what do we know? We know that Shlomo HaMelech's mother was Bathsheba. Bathsheba's father was Eliam. Eliam's father was Achisoifel. Achisoifel was the great-grandfather of Shlomo HaMelech. Now, Shlomo HaMelech was 7 years old when his great-grandfather Achisoifel died. Achisoifel at the time was 33 years old. So when Shlomo HaMelech was 7, his great-grandfather was 33. When Shlomo HaMelech was 0, when he was born, Achisoifel was 26. Right? 33 minus 7, so he was 26. Now, in the meantime, there were 3 pregnancies, right? Right? When Shlomo was, was in the womb, when Bathsheba was in the womb, and when Eliam was in the womb, right? There were 3 pregnancies, right? Shlomo's pregnancy, I don't know if, Bathsheba's pregnancy, I don't know if that makes sense, and Eliam's pregnancy. Okay, so those 3 pregnancies were each 9 months, 27 months, roughly 2 years. So we're saying again, Achisophel was 26 when Shlomo was born. Now, he was a great-grandfather already. And if we're trying to figure out how old was everybody when they became parents, well, now, there were, pregnancies involved for those 3 generations. So that's 2 years worth of pregnancy. So fine, so 20, so therefore 20, so subtract that. So we're dealing with 24 years divided among 3 people, Achisophel, Eliam, and Bathsheba. So each one was 8 years old at the time that they became parents, right? So Kama Havya Lu Tlos Vitlos. So Achisophel was 33 when Shlomo Melech was 7. Tal Sheva Da'ava Shlomo. So now subtract 7. So to find that when Shlomo was born, Pashtu Esem V'Shis, Achisophel was 26. Dal Tarte Shnei L'Tlosa Ibure. Now subtract from 26 2 years worth of pregnancies. Ishtikach D'Chol Chad V'Chad. So Achisophel, Eliam, and Bathsheba B'Tamnei Olid gave birth at the age of 8. Mimai, but how do we know that that's true? Dilma Tavai B'Tesha Olid. No, maybe Achisophel and Eliam became fathered children when they were 9. Uvasheva Olida B'Shis, and Bathsheba gave birth when she was 6. Mishum de Itza Baria, because women are healthy and can give birth at younger ages. Teda de have la volad meikar, and you should just know that actually Bathsheba already had a child, so clearly she was definitely having children before 8. So therefore, this isn't actually a proof, because it could just be that Bathsheba was 6, I guess, when Shlomo was born, and Eliam was 9 when Bathsheba was born, and Achisophel was 9 when Eliam was born. So it's not a proof about 8 from there. Elamiyacha, rather from here. Ada told us Terach. Avram Avinu's father was Terach. Terach holded as Avram, as Nocher, as Haran. And Terach had 3 children, Avram, Nocher, and Haran. We want to assume that they're in age order right now, and that there was a year between them. But Avram Gadol mi Nocher Shana, v'Nocher Gadol mi Haran Shana. Avram was 1 year older than Nocher. Nocher was 1 year older than Haran. Nimtza Avram Gadol shtei Shana mi Haran. So Avram Mimele is 2 years older than Haran. Now we know. Okay, so now we're going to see from other psukim, Haran had 2 children, Milcah and Yiska. Yiska is Sarah. So Haran had 2 children, Milcah, who was married to Nachor, and Sarah, who was of course married to Avram Avinu. Now, so Avram Avinu married Haran's daughter Sarah. We also know that Avram Avinu was 10 years older than Sarah, right? It says that when Yitzchak was born, Avram was 100 and Sarah was 90. He was 10 years older than Sarah, which means when Sarah was born, Avram was 10. Avram is also 2 years older than Sarah's father Haran, which means Haran was 8. We'll see that Avram and Nachor both married daughters of Haran. V'Omer B'Yitzchak, says Rabbi Yitzchak, Yiska, right? It says in that pasuk, right? Avi Milcah Avi Yiska, that Haran was the father of Yiska. Yiska is Sarah, and Yiska is Avram Avinu's wife, Sarah. Yiska, why is she called Yiska? Shesocha Baruch HaKodesh, because she can see with divine spirit, I guess, Ruach HaKodesh. That's why it says that whatever Sarah says to you, Abraham, do. Alternatively, Yiska, because everybody would look at her beauty. Right? It also says that when he heard the news about the Yitzchak, he said, what? How can it be that I'm 100 and she's 90 and we're having children? Avram was 10 years older than Sarah, v'koshish me'avua tartin shnin, and Avram was 2 years older than Sarah's father Haran. Ishtikach ki olda Haran l'Sarah betamnei olida. So Haran was 8 when Sarah was born. Mimai, but how do we know that that is actually accurate? Tilma Avram zuta de'achva hava. Wait, maybe when it says Avram, Nachor, and Haran, that isn't in age order, rather in smartness order. Right? Maybe Avram was actually the youngest, not the oldest. They are listed in terms of how smart they were, and Avram was the smartest. And I'll further the argument that they are being listed in smartness order, because we have a similar thing by Noach. By Noach, ben Chamesh Meos Shana, that when Noach was 500 years old, Vayilad Noach as Shem, as Cham, as Yafes, he had three children, Shem, Cham, and Yafes. So we'd want to say, like we had initially said by Avram, Nachor, and Haran, Shem gadol micham shana, v'cham gadol miyafes shana. That Shem was older than Cham by a year, Cham was older than Yafes by a year. Nimtza Shem gadol miyafes shtei shanim, and therefore Shem would be older than Yafes by 2 years. Uchsiv v'Noach ben sheish me'os shana v'mabel oyer ma'im al haaretz. And 100 years later, when Noach was 600 years old, that is when there was the flood, which would mean that at that time, based on what we're saying, Shem would have been 100 already. Uchsiv, Eile Todo Shem, these are the generations of Shem. Shem ben Mea Shana, Shem is 100 years. So we're saying that 2 years after the flood, Shem is 100. But I thought 2 years after the flood, he should be 102. Should already by then be 102, 2 years after the flood, if he was the oldest. So Ella, rather when it says Shem, Cham, V'Yafes, Shem is not the oldest, Shem is actually the youngest, but he's the smartest. And therefore also by Avram, Nachor, and Haran, Avram is not the oldest, rather the smartest. So there goes our argument to say that Haran was 8 years old when Sarah was born. Amr of Kahana, says of Kahana, I said this before Zvid Narda about Shem and Cham and Yafes. Amr Li, he says to me, Atun me'ocha masni su, you learn it out from there with the 2 years after the flood thing. But we learn it from here. U'l'shem yulad gamhu avi kol b'nei ever achi Yefes agadol. It says achi Yefes agadol, that Yefes agadol shebe'echav hoya, that Yefes was the oldest of the brothers, not Shem. Elaminalan, no. So then how do we know that in the earlier generations, children who are 8 years old were able to father, people at 8 years old were able to father children? It's from here, Uvitzalel ben Uri ben Chur lemata Yehuda, that Betzalel, of course, built the Mishkan. Uchsiv v'tomos azuva vayikach lo Kalev es Ephras. Okay, so Kalev married Ephras, v'atele lo es Chur, and he gave birth to Chur. So Betzalel ben Uri ben Chur, and Chur was the son of Kalev. So Betzalel's father was Uri, Uri's father was Chur, Chur's father was Kalev, and all of them are men. So Kalev is the great grandfather of Betzalel. Now, where am I? Okay. Avad Betzalel Mishkan bar kama have. When Betzalel built the Mishkan, how old was he? Bar Tleiser, he was 13 years old. Ish osim, I guess adults in the work that they're doing. So he was 13. V'tanya shana rishona also Moshe Mishkan, and it's taught that in year 1, Moshe Rabbeinu made the Mishkan, and at that time Betzalel was 13. Shnia Heikim Mishkan. And then the second year he inaugurated the Mishkan, established the Mishkan, Vishalach Meraglim, and that's when the Meraglim were. So that was the next year was the Meraglim, which means at that point Betzalel was 14, 1 year after building the Mishkan. So he was 14 at that time. Uchsiv, and it says in Sefer Yoshua, Kalev says, Ben arboim shona anoichi Vishalach Moshe Eved Hashem v'gomer, that I was 40 years old at the time of the Meraglim. Which means, when was the Meraglim? The second year in the Midbar. We also said that by that point, his great-grandson Betzalel was 14. Okay, which means, therefore, that Kalev was 26 years older than Betzalel, than his great-grandson Betzalel. Ve'ata ine anochi ayom ben chomish v'shmonim shana, now I'm 85. Kama havu luhu arboin, so he was 40 at the time of the Meraglim. Dalar beiser dav Betzalel, and at that time Betzalel was 14, which means that when Betzalel was born, Kalev was 26. Pashlu esem v'shis dal taitishne letzasa ibure, and then moved 2 years for 3 pregnancies, right? That of Chur, that of Uri, that of Betzalel. Ishtikach d'chochad v'chad b'tamnei olid. So each one fathered children at 8, because 24 divided by 8 is 24 divided by 3 is 8, and they're all men. So it's not like there's any woman that may have had children at a younger age, and therefore we learn out that in the earlier generations, they were able to father children at the age of 8. Ben v'lo bas, the Mishnah had said a son and not a daughter. Tanya, Amar Reb Shimon, did we say, was that in the Brisa? Yeah. Tanya Amar Reb Yishma, Amar Reb Shimon says, Reb Shimon, Badinu de Shetei Bas, really Oskiven Sora Mora. Now, in principle, a daughter should be able to be a Bas Sora Mora, right? Because the same thing can be, we should have the same concerns, that she'll have some kind of addiction for meat, for wine, then she won't be able to find it, and she'll go out to the Pashas Derachim, and she'll do Averis with people. Ele Gezeres HaKosav Hi, Ben Velo Bas. But the Pasuk says, Ben Velo Bas, and therefore it's only a boy, not a girl. That was Daf Samach Tes of Masechta Sanhedrin. There were some interesting things, questions about can minors have children or not. Yesterday we were saying that Ben Tesh Shana V'Yom Echad can have a child. Rabbah says it can have a child, so there's all discussion about that. Do we go based on Rov when it comes to Dinei Nefashis? We talked about children being able, in earlier generations, that they're able to have, boys were able to have children right at the age of 8. Interesting stuff. Peace out.